Hallo, willkommen. Vielen Dank für den Besuch. Ähm, Wenn ich annehmen muss, dass viele Leute, if I have to assume that many people um, associate my name with the lights that we're exhibiting, I would like to point out that by soul and by heart, I'm a filmmaker. I was a DOP, later on also a director and producer, and um, I did films about the history of the Kremlin. Can you all hear me? Okay. So this was from the history of St. Petersburg, Leningrad. And there's a battleship there that in my story was fired 3 times. One time to start the revolution by firing a shot at the Winter Palace. Another time for Sergei Eisenstein for his film October. And then I went on the ship. Hello, Captain. He said, this is a beautiful museum. She said, this is not a museum, this is a working battleship. I said, can you? He said, I'll show you. I said, wait a minute, let me get the camera. Got the headphones from the sound man. And then I said, it's no good if the gun goes like this. I want the gun to start here, go over the camera, and then I can see the recoil. He said, just tell the gunner. So I did this for moving the gun. I said, this for shoot. Okay, shoot. And when I woke up from the sound, everybody was looking at a different direction. There were no more windows in the houses on the river. Okay, then I did the first Western film on the Russian cosmonauts. Among that, they closed the largest airport that there is in Russia. For a whole day, they didn't tell the passengers. They were sitting out in the snow. And I was flying in the 2-seater MiG with Gagarin and an Antonov with Tereshkova, Nikolaev, Popovich, and all of those. Then I did many other full-size, expensive specials on the French Revolution, where I had 60 lighting people, 20 stagehands, because in those days we needed a lot of light. The Spanish Armada, the Reformation, Middle Ages, and so on and so on. Expensive specials. And then I also shot documentaries in over 40 countries. And that was with a much smaller team and with less light. So I usually traveled with 2 cases of Lowell light. None of you is old enough to remember the inventiveness of Lowell light. Ross Lowell was a tremendous inventor. But there was something missing for me. And that was a light that had a focus range and a far reach. And that's how I, among all the other things, like here you see I built dollies. Some of the older ones may remember Bogdanovich, The Last Picture Show. That was on that dolly. Germans remember ZDF, the crime story. They have 2 of those still today, and so on. So, but I built teleprompters, and then I needed to build for my own purposes a light with far reach. So then I want to add that every studio light, the Fresnel light, is a spherical lens. And spherical lenses cannot give totally even light distribution. So I started with non-spherical lenses, 2 of those. And that's the way it looks. And here you see the light distribution of other comparable lights in those days. Not even, whilst my lights had a very even light distribution, if that's what you want. And then when you go to the spot position, like here, this is the spot position of these other lights, and this is the spot position that I reached. So I had an exceptional focus range of 1 to 25 that you will not find with any other light on the planet. And a far reach, and also something that I was very proud of. So I got the recognition of the Oscar committee for that light, and an Emmy and stuff like that. But what I'm proud of is the clean beam system, which means inside the beam, totally even. Outside, nothing. Flood, medium, spot. And that gives you far reach and qualifies it for what I call precision lighting. If you want to have softened edges, there are 30 different kinds of diffusion gels or diffusion filters and so on. So now we are in a completely new generation that we call Neo. That most probably technically is the best you can find. Why? Because one ballast will associate with 34 different dado lights. Different wattages, ultraviolet, infrared, anything. It recognizes them, it says, hello, I will give you what you need. Also, LED lights don't always dim smoothly all the way to the end. At about 5%, usually there are some hiccups. This one dims all the way down to 0.1%. And what most film people don't know, you can choose between linear and exponential dimming. Yeah? Film and video people don't know much about it, but if you do some drama production and you want to come up from dark, the exponential curve is much more effective. And also sometimes you shoot commercials, and we have cameras that go higher speeds, and these are safe until 400,000 frames per second. And each one of those ballasts has DMX. I'm a stupid cameraman, I thought DMX is DMX, but there's 8-bit, there's 6-bit, there's all kinds of different versions. We service all of them. And you can also control it from your mobile phone if you take the Neo Plus that has the wireless function. And you can work with batteries or AC adapter, and they slide on the mini V-lock. After 3 years of intensive development, we're now proud to present Dedolight Neo, electronic management system for auto sensing of 34 different focusing LED Dedolights. Finally, perfect dimming, high-speed video mode up to 50,000 frames per second, all DMX functions on board. Functional details are now going to be explained by Rafael Pollack, one of our team's lighting designers who has accompanied this project from the very start.
Our DT Neo family is powered through the V-mount connector only, which means we got 3 different power options. Battery operation, we have a brand new AC-DC adapter, and there's an external adapter for cabling it through any third-party power supply at your like. For this demonstration, I'm going to run it off batteries. which snaps into place, and it's powered on by hitting the on-off button for a couple of seconds. From now on, it's in idle mode, which means if you lose power and connect it again, it comes back to the last mode settings. Electronic itself is auto-sensing, which means at the moment I'm connected to a DLED 7 Neo head, which has a new connector layout, and I will disconnect it and connect it to a DLED 9 with a Neo connector. And as you can see, it would automatically switch on at the same settings. Internally, of course, we are loading up a different library to get the electronic settings correct. Let me go into some of the details in the menu. And we try to keep it very, very simple, which means we got two different levels. One is in the manual mode only. And for the more sophisticated functions, you need to have RDM control. And then you can access all the functions you may want to use when you're in RDM, like 16-bit smoothing function and furthermore. So for dimming, we have something we call elastic dimming. When you dim very slow, you go in small increments. When you go faster, you can see that we accelerate the dimming as we go. We got it on both dimming and color temperature. To access the menu, we hit the menu button once, and then we have this once again very simple menu for the manual operation. The DMX menu is only gonna enable you to set your DMX address. If you need to switch once again to 16-bit, you need to go through RDM, but we think our 8-bit is so good that you hardly need to switch to 16-bit. As you can see a little bit already, is if I don't touch the menu anymore, it's going to switch back to the main screen to be easier in operation. So we're back in the main screen, and you can see the DMX address, intensity and color temperature. On the monocolor light head, we would not see the color temperature, of course. The second option that you have, if you have a Neo Plus ballast system, which would be the wireless version, would enable you to either switch on Lumen Radius CMX, the wireless Wi-Fi system, or the Bluetooth system. And then when you switch on Bluetooth, you're going to see a small Bluetooth indication, and on wireless you would have the Wi-Fi indication. But let me switch it off and go back in the manual explanation. So after the Wi-Fi settings, I can access the dim mode. In the dim mode currently we got three different options. One is a linear curve, the option to go for the very, very deep smooth dimming. The second is an exponential, which are the ones you might use most often to have a very smooth dimming or an accurate dimming by 1000 steps. The third option that we have, we call high speed, where you're not able to re-dim, but we can go up to almost infinite number of frames. We tested up to 50,000 frames, but from the electronic basics, we could go much higher. On the display setup, we can disable the screen. So after a couple of seconds, when you don't manipulate on any of the increment dials, it will switch off and only come back on when you used your dials again. So for that, you need to switch on auto-off. Rotation would rotate the display if you mount it differently in a stand and still want to be able to read the screen. The info menu will tell you the firmware version, and we will enable our agents and teach them how to upgrade the firmware through RDM. And there's a small hour counter for rental houses who need to validate the time of running. Most important for everyone is the factory reset will bring all the settings back to our factory standard. So you always can be safe on starting off with a brand new setting where DMX channel 1 is selected, the linear mode, 8-bit DMX. If you need to access the 16-bit, it goes via RDM through the DMX board, and you will find details in the manual which you can find on our QR codes directly. Okay.
Okay. We also had, for a while, with a Chinese partner, some multicolor lights. And that company was sold, and the company who bought it doesn't make any service, does not continue. So by now we've reworked it, and we have new optical system for it that will give us perfect color mixing, which before we didn't have in a perfect way, and we have an increased focus range. And this will be in production in about 2.5, maximum 3 months. Then We're introducing, and you can see it at the booth, the larger ones, RGB-ACL lights. But there's yet a difference. Normally LED lights have a COB, and that's a big bunch of chips, and usually it's very large. Like a monocolor from my series had 24 chips, a bicolor 48 chips. You can imagine how much an RGB-ACL has. And the larger it grows, the more difficult it becomes for the optics, because working optics want the smallest possible light source. But this has something else. It has a different color engine that we call a matrix. And the difference is not easily understood by regular camera people. It gives you an expanded range into tertiary colors beyond the regular color triangle. Okay, so that's what it looks like, and supposedly that's far superior to any kind of COB. Okay, then we have optical accessories for it. We have a parallel beam adapter, which is something that's very special for us. We have a zoom lens, and we have a projection attachment and a wide angle attachment. And now we come to what I claim to have the most perfect range of reflected light. Not only because we have a long history. In early 60s, I shot a series of movies in Indonesia, and some of the houses there, the roofs go down very far, and people live on a podest, and I used tabletops with a hinge on it and Roscoe reflective material to reflect the sunlight, and on the inside of the roof I could make hard reflectors, stretched or crumpled for soft light, and could do very differentiated lighting. Other beam lights, other reflective lights have been around for ages, like mole beam lights, and this is from long time ago, movies in Poland. We now have 5 different reflector surfaces, 5 different sizes. Number 1 works like a mirror, just redirects the light without changing it. Number 2 spreads it by 13 degree. Number 3 by 30 degree. Number 4 by 90 degree. And the number 5 spreads it in one direction. Yeah. And also now we have what is called a reflector. Not a totally new idea. Something like that has been around 50 years ago, where we can bend the reflective surface and therefore spread the light in one direction that we choose. We've always had 4 different types of reflectors with 4 different characters, 4 different spread angles in 5 different sizes. Then we added the number 5, a spreading reflector. And now we went one step further. We today introduce the reflector. V means variable, and it means that we can change the surface from completely flat to some bent shape, and that allows us to control the spread angle. How wide do we want to spread? In horizontal way or vertical, and it's gradual without any steps to it, and it can be a very helpful tool if you need that kind of light distribution. There's one lever, and when you activate that, it controls the way in which the reflector is bent and gets a new shape. Here we have a number 2 reflector. We can also have a number 3. So it offers more choices beyond what we've had. Now we look at the number 3, again as a V-flector, again variable spread, and it's softer, edges are softer, and we can turn it to spread vertical and horizontal, and we can tilt it. So that's another addition to our range of reflectors called the V-flector, meaning variable spread. Those reflective surfaces can be exchanged if you want a softer spread or a harder spread. We also have something that we call efflect, effect and reflect. That's a surface with a great multitude of mirrors, small ones, medium ones, big ones, and they are on a bending surface that you can shape in any which way. And the interesting fact is that the light close to the efflect or further away gives you completely different results, from forming little light drops like sunlight coming through a leaf tree, all the way up to very gentle distribution like a Monet painting in the Musée Marmottan on the river, the floating lights. And
we're doing a movie at Astra. It's a James Gray film, and with Hoyt van Hoytema is the director of photography, and he had a request that we find a very specialized lamp, or that we create a very specialized lamp that was a parabolic lamp that actually was parabolic and didn't have a big hole in the center. And Hoyt was very concerned that in scenes that we had to have the sun, that it be a parallel beam and not a spreading beam. David and Dedo brought down the PB70. We tested it in camera tests at Camtech prior to the show, and it was exactly what we were looking for. A perfectly parallel and even light that replicated the sun. The beam is fantastic. That's the first great thing about it. It's a 1200 HMI. You can plug it into the house. When we tested mole beams, we tested 18Ks, we bounced lamps into mirrors, we did everything we could think of, and nothing compared to the PB70. It's a perfect parallel beam, turns on and off, hot spree strike, no problem, dims, DMXable, throw it around, and the quality of light's unbelievable. We use 4 of them at all times through the windows as the sun. As often as possible, we push it as far back as we can to cover as much area as we can. And it does exactly what it was supposed to do, and it has made our life very, very easy.
With the larger size efflects that we now have, you can light an entire studio, ceiling, floor, walls, and create some effect like the aurora borealis, the northern light. Microphone still okay? Okay, fine. Then we built something special since we are at home in optics. We built parallel beam intensifiers that you can put onto all of our 55 different focusing dado lights. That's many more than you know. And you can create beams, and at the same time it changes the output. Okay, now for the big drama production, this has a very serious value that you don't find with any other light. It's a parabolic light. Again, needs a very small light source. This is why we created a very special HMI, very small light source, that has perfect color, perfect everything, and we have a 2-degree exit angle. Where it comes out of the light, you see the darker center at 2-3 meter distance that turns into total even light. Now, the specialty is here we see the light on the street, and it lights up into a reflector, and that reflects it into the room. But the light does not come from the light head. Very difficult even for experienced camera people to understand. It comes from a virtual light source. And that's the only light that has this. That is 60 feet, 20 meters behind the light. Yeah? And if I tell camera people that you can place this light inside the studio and the light comes from outside, they sometimes misunderstand this and say, then there must be a window. Yeah? So not easy to understand, but it's a very special light character that has a serious preference for drama productions. And with this we can simulate sunlight, light from a very far distance, even in a small studio. And everybody who's had to do with lights and film has heard about the square law. Double the distance, quarter of the light. Yeah? Unavoidable is physics. But here, seemingly, we beat the physics. At 5 meter, you see, we have 112,000 lux. So at 10 meter, we should have 28,000 lux. But we have 68. And we also have a 2.5K version that at close distance is quite a lot stronger, but at further distances it loses a little bit of this advantage. Since most of the decision makers in our profession are men, and men tend to feel size matters, yeah, the more kilowatt a light needs, the better it must be. So when you buy a car, of course you go and say, which of these cars uses the most gasoline? Yeah? And at the same time, we go to forums and we talk about greentech, we talk about ecology, we talk about economy. So where are we? This little light with 1.2 kilowatt you can fire up in grandmother's kitchen. Yeah? But it has more light output than a 9K array and spot, 50% more. Yeah? Okay? But 9 kilowatt must be more than 1. Okay. So again here, at 5 meter distance, what we measure. At 10 meter distance, what we should measure, according to the square law, 28,000, but we have a lot more. Which also means for drama productions that the fall off, when your actor is coming closer and further away from the light, is much less noticeable. And this illusion of light that comes from very far away, you cannot create in the same way with any other light.
I think it's a beautiful way to light because it's simple.
The quality of the light is amazing, and it comes close to that feeling of real sunlight coming through the window.
I guess it frees up time because you're not running cable to everywhere, or having to put up loads and loads of frames or things to control a big lamp. There's more time to kind of finesse.
There's more time to light.
It's like you're touching the light. It's like you're closer to touching the light. You're like removing the lamp. So you're not touching or moving a lamp. It's like you're actually touching and moving the light.
When you walk into the room and you see that lit by this, you think, yeah, the sun is coming through. So that believable light, that's what is really convincing, I think.
Gives me great pleasure to have today with some gaffers and cinematographers. And we're here to talk about reflected light, specifically the one light that rules them all, the PV70. And we're going to focus on the PV70 today. So I'll do some quick introductions. We've got Jason and Jono. Jono Smith, Jason Clare from a London-based company called Reflectric. They're gaffers, cinematographers, and you work specifically with reflected light. We've got Carolina Smith-Holstein, who's a gaffer, and she works on feature films and television productions and all sorts. And Una Menges, cinematographer, who also works on feature films and television. And they're all into the reflected light system, which is something that's really come about in the last 2 or 3 years. So let's open this up to talk specifically about the PV70, infinity lighting.
The quality of the light is amazing, and it comes close to that feeling of real sunlight coming through the window because of that virtual light source. It has traveled already before it comes out of the head, so it's far away. So you would need to put your HMIs or whatever 50 meters away, which is impossible.
I mean, for me, I believe it. I believe the light, which is the most important thing for me. And to believe or be touched by a light, it would have to be a big light, like a big mole beam or something to make me feel that. So, and I find it much easier to shape and control. This feels like there's a lot less on the set.
Also, if you're in a virtual studio, again, you want the light to feel like it's coming from further away. So you're creating a sunlight, and you want it to feel like it's beyond the virtual wall. It's coming from high in the sky, and this gives you that. So in that virtual world, I think this has got a lot of great things that could happen with it.
Yeah.
Okay, you touched on something there, which is actually what Dedo calls the virtual light source, which is the fact that this light is special. It creates authentic looking sunlight, and it creates what Dedo calls infinity lighting. Light from a very far distance is how he terms it.
The feel of it is that the fall off is different to your usual light.
It feels like it's coming from further
Usually
away.
you measure it there and you measure it twice the distance and you get a quarter of the light output with the inverse square law. And with this light you don't have that fall off as such. That is working against the law somehow. Has traveled already 20 meters before it comes out of the head.
Well, it feels like it's coming from 20 meters away. So the lamp is 70 centimeters across the diameter, and it's a 2-degree beam. So if you were to imagine the lines of the 2-degree beam, 70 centimeters across, those 2-degree lines would kind of meet somewhere 20 meters behind the lamp, approximately 20 meters. So that's where it feels like the light is coming from as soon as you turn it on.
And that's received by the parabolic reflectors?
Yes. The whole of the lamp is a parabolic reflector behind it. There's no focusing disc behind the bulb. The lamp is a parabolic reflector with the bulb in the middle. And because you're using a mirrored surface, so the light already feels like it's coming from 20 meters away. And then when it's on the number 1 reflector, it feels like it's coming from 1.5 times beyond the mirror. So it's 1.5 times, so it's 20 meters plus whatever this is, 7 meters.
Yeah.
So that will feel like it's coming from 30 meters behind this reflector.
And that sort of, I mean, it's just, that's great when you're on a film when you can't take over the road and put a massive light on the other side of the road.
It can be right here, but actually,
Yeah.
It's a big saving.
And then you get all the, true parallel, you can't really see there, but true, you get true parallel shadows. So the PB70 has this infinity lighting where the fact it is a bulb in the center of a parabolic mirror. So the glass diameter is 70 centimeters across, and the beam angle is 2 degrees. So if you were to imagine this 2-degree line 70 centimeters apart and trace it back, it would meet 20 meters behind the lamp. So already it feels like it's coming from an enormous distance. But also it's a front-facing HMI bulb, and it's pointing into a black cone, and the Dedo bulbs have a special frosted band across the arc of the HMI. So this is basically, you're getting a round point source reflected back into the light. It's not with a traditional HMI or say a traditional tungsten filament where you've got it's vertical, and when that's glowing, it's always going to be this vertical stick. Or if it's a HMI bulb and it's, a double-ended bulb, you've got that arc in the middle. This is this all these other things that help create this natural illusion of daylight. It's the virtual light source and the fact it's this round point light source that feels like it's coming from far away that really helps mimic sunlight.
The light has traveled 20 meters before it comes out of the housing, basically. And that makes it a light that is so close to sunlight coming through windows, for example, and the fall off is much more like sunlight or like daylight. The idea of that virtual light source is bringing it so close to the feeling of sunlight, basically. So that's really convinced me.
the quality of the light, I've got a little bit of a problem with lots of LEDs and lights that take less power. So the quality of this light is, I believe it in my gut or something. And there's so many lights that I don't, unless they're massive, big mole beams and carbon arcs and things like that. So it's been a game changer for me. And then it's completely opened up the experience of lighting with lots of different sparks. I feel like they might be as sceptical at first or think, oh, it's just a reflector. And it is just a reflector. But actually, when they get into the feathering and the different kind of amounts and realise how much less work is involved, or realise what it means to them that they're more engaged in the actual lighting instead of running the cables and switching the thing on, that's when I see them getting excited.
Infinity lighting, yeah, this thing creates, because it's got that beautiful parabole behind the light which encapsulates all the light and fires it out, it just looks like it's coming from much further away. And because it's such a straight beam of light, there's no spill off it. You know, you can put it on the ground and fire it up 4 floors of a building and be filming up on the 3rd floor and hang a reflector out of the floor above. Your light's on the ground and you're reflecting really good sunlight into it, and it's looking like it's coming from 100 meters beyond where the light actually is.
It's going to be standard kit for me now. You know, if they're around and we can afford them, then I'll have them. I'm about to prep another film right now, and one of the main sets is quite a small area, and I'm thinking I might not need anything else. I'm thinking I can have this outside, it's in a studio, on the floor, and just going into mirrors and lighting the whole thing like that. So, yeah, I'm already designing the next job around it. So I don't know what that would do to production if they got a list and it's like one light and a couple of reflectors, might blow them away.
Then we have a wonderful movie, and you can find them all at full length on our YouTube channel and on Dedo TV. So there are only some pictures from a French TV series, where in some of the pictures you will see the special character of this light for the major drama production. Okay. Now there's also 2.5K version. Okay, now for the smaller size production that works out of a station wagon, we also have a solution. This is a light that also was recognized by the Oscar committee. It has something special. It has 3 movements for focusing. 1 button, 3 movements. And it has in the spot function, it has an exit angle of 4 degrees, which means very far reach. It has a focus range of 1 to 20 that you will not find with any other light on the planet. Okay, now comes the big trick. We have even color distribution. With spherical systems, it would look a little bit uneven on the edges. Sometimes a blue aura on the outer edge. With us, totally even. And then also HMIs used to be hellish. You were unpacking 10, 12 HMIs, and they were all different. And you had to choose. Now, we claim, have absolute evenness and perfect color. HMI usually had very spiky colors. Each of the chemicals produced its own color, and nothing in the next one, and nothing in the next one. Now, we're going very even, and you see on the right-hand side, the circle is perfection, and where it's not filling the circle is not perfection. Okay. And also amazingly, this is a daylight light source. The red, the R9, is very well represented. There's a little Japanese car manufacturer called Mazda. They have a signature color called red, and Hiroki from Japan can tell you about it. They had the feeling that this red could only be reproduced by this kind of light. Okay, now HMI lights are dangerous because they have a very high output of ultraviolet. Ultraviolet A, B, and C. C is the most dangerous one, and it destroys your lenses in your eye. It gives you sunburn and all other kind of bad effects. So we compare a 575 light of another well-known manufacturer with the UV content of our light. And so that you can see where we stand, where to put the arrows. Yeah? Other lights have 20 times more ultraviolet because I developed a UV cut filter on the first lens. And if that ever falls out and you still want to use it, the second lens is made from Duran glass, which is also a UV killer. And the lamp, as many HMI lamps say, says UV stop. It doesn't completely stop UV, but it takes it a degree down. But with our filter in front, you don't need any of this. Now comes the big trick. The light itself in spot 4 degrees. Now we add this cooking pot that we call parallel beam intensifier, and we have also 4 degrees. So what the heck? But we have 500% more light. Now the experienced cameraman will say, how many watt does it have now? No, it's the same light. But we add 500% more light. How is that possible? The explanation is that with a parallel beam adapter, these extra optics, the light is in flood position. And that's why we don't lose as much light as we would lose in the spot position. And we have such parallel beam adapters for all 55 of our focusing dado lights. Okay. Now, if to anybody greentech is something we've heard about, or ecology, or for some people even economy, yeah, then our 1.2K giving you more light output than the so-called 6K and 5K parallel beam lights that you find on the floor here. Okay? Fire it up from grandmother's kitchen, but get more light than anybody else. And they're all slaves of the square law. Double the distance, quarter of the light. We're not. And here comes something else. We have a little 40-watt light. Even the single production person, YouTuber, says 40 watt. I need more. This 40-watt bicolor light, we add again a parallel beam intensifier. This time we get 800% more light. Yeah? And with that, we can fire up an assembly of 4 reflectors, which then can direct to 3 other reflectors for conventional lighting, like you find it in any book. Front light, key light, backlight, yeah? And it's easy to use. But some of our agents say, for our young people, this is much too difficult. Yeah? They all read the focal press books. Key light, fill light, backlight, same thing. Yeah? Except that you don't use wattage, you don't need lights. You use reflectors that are as light as a piece of paper. And it includes an E-flect on the background. Okay? So, this is the 40-watt light. Spot, 700 lux. With the intensifier, 7,000 lux. And it's a tiny little light, where most of the grown-ups will say, I'll give this to my daughter for her birthday present. Yeah, for her Barbie doll. But, yeah. Okay. Then we have the Lightstream tabletop, where right now I'm short of the Lidzilla lights. They will come in another 2 or 3 months again. And with that, you can do any kind of traditional tabletop task, food, cosmetics, jewelry, wonderful, in the smallest space, with so much detail that you will never find again anywhere else. And again, there are many movies on this if you want to look at them. So all my normal reflectors can be motorized, and others cannot. And DMX control
when we employ
and so on. Now we have something else.
Redirection.
When we use reflected light, we use a reflector. And it's unavoidable that some light goes above the reflector, below, left and right. So the way to avoid this is you call 4 people with flags and stands. So 1 reflector on 1 stand, 4 flags on 4 more stands, and if you have like 16 reflectors on your stage, add 4 for each. You need a whole army of people. So what we have is a system where on 1 single stand we can put a flag, be it a square flag, where we can put 4 reflectors side by side and take the parasitic light out, or we have them in round for single reflectors, and we have them in different sizes. Now comes another trick. This black flag you can cover with a surface, like put on the pants with a zip, in white, gold, silver, and soft gold. And like if you're working with daylight, a soft gold, larger reflector size can help a little bit to make it a little bit warmer, more acceptable. And there's one secret to it. Very often we shoot a portrait with reflected light. Looks beautiful. Yeah? Then you do the long shot and all the reflectors are in the picture. But the moment you move the reflector further away, it gets harder. So it's not soft light anymore, it's hard light. So putting this large reflector surface around the reflector bridges between hard light and soft light. And in virtual production, I already said, we can synchronize the multicolor lights to the screen, like we did here. We have videos about that also. And if also in virtual studios, one of the tasks is to show the Sahara Desert in the studio, or the beach of Rio, then you do want light that looks natural, like sunlight, and that's where you're back to the PB70 and to this. And then we also do strange lights for forensic people. In every crime movie you see the people running around with ultraviolet lights. We have ultraviolet and infrared lights where we can shift the frequency. And for the specialists there, that is interesting because it gives them added information. There's also a movie from an archaeologist who says, I'm looking for Egyptian blue. That was a color pigment from the early Middle Ages. And as the Arabs took over Northern Africa, it was not available anymore. But it was not used only as blue, but was used behind other colors to enhance them. And if you go to Pompeii and you see a fresco and you say, let me see whether there's Egyptian blue behind it, people don't like you. But at 465 nanometer, Egyptian blue says, here I am. Okay, specialties also, like we light museums, over 30 museums in Europe, 30 in Russia, the Musée d'Orsay, not the whole museum, but the Impressionists are lit with Dedo light, and so on. And amazingly enough, Dedo always talks too much. It's a habit of the dinosaurs. So now we have another 7 minutes for questions.